Hello, everyone. Happy Saturday. This is Beth Guide with Talking Purple, and today is April the 11th, 2026. We have a lot to talk about because there's a lot of headlines that have perked my ears, a lot of things that have happened this week, and I even took a field trip and went down to City Hall on one of these issues. So, I live in Houston, naturalized American citizen. So I heard that they were going to take a vote on this Proposition A. And I decided I was going to go down and speak on it because I didn't like what this proposition was, which basically it's trying to do is the city of Houston put an ordinance in to try to buffer the police department from participating in law enforcement activities when it comes to ICE. And the thing is that the city of Houston doesn't have the authority to do this. So I got in my car, took some of my friends, and we went on down to City Hall. And the first thing is, and at some point I'm going to learn how to make videos and show you some that went on. But for right now, I got there and there's this line of people to get into City Hall. And they were all left-wing groups that are organized. I'm going to say probably sponsored by somebody. And they all got up there, one after the next, and talked about their group and how this ordinance impacts it and why they support putting this ordinance in. Never once did I hear we should follow the law. Okay. And again, I am a proponent, and I'm going to get to this too. I'm a proponent of follow the law. All right. So if you don't like something, you don't make a law to break the law. You correct the law wherever it's stemming from to the way that you want it. That's the way it should work. The Houston City Council does not have purview over immigration law or how the police act with federal authorities. The federal law is there. You are required to follow it. And we should not be making laws that circumvent the federal government. Okay. There's other ways to handle this, of course. I mean, but this is not the way to do it. So I went down and I was one of five speakers that were there on the, hey, this is a bad law and this is why side of the argument. And my position on it is I heard a lot of whining about people, and I'm using that word properly. There was a lot of whining over, well, the Hispanic community is afraid to go to the doctor, the hospital. They're afraid to call the police, which makes their their neighborhoods unsafe. They are afraid to go to the gas station or the grocery store. I am here naturalized. I had a permanent residency visa, and never once have I ever been afraid to do any of those activities. Not once. I don't worry about getting picked up. Now, somebody can say, well, Beth, you're not Hispanic. When I tell you I lived in New Jersey and everybody thought I was Puerto Rican and got mistaken for one as an Italian, especially in the summer, um, I have never had this problem. All right. And I think as the naturalized community, the legal immigrant community, they understand what the lift is. They understand what the burden is. And I don't mean burden like it's so onerous, but I have to show my naturalization papers to renew my driver's license. I can't make a pre appointment to go renew my driver's license because I am not born in this country. So every time I have to renew it, I have to show up with a naturalization certificate and or a passport. When I apply for a job or I do, and I understand I work for myself, but there's several times I've had to, and in fact, not I took an adjunct position with HCC. I had to go down and I had to show my paperwork. I would not be offended if when I went to the gas station, a police officer came up and asked me, "Are you a naturalized citizen or are you an American citizen?" I would have no problem saying yes. If you want to see my passport, I'm happy to show it to you. I've got no problem doing that. And I know of no naturalized or legal, permanent legal resident that has these problems. So what we're talking about is people that are here illegally that cannot use public services the way that they could previously. If you don't like it, get in your travel mechanism, because I don't know if they walk, they have a car, I don't know. Take a horse, take a bus. However, go back to where you came from. You don't make our community less safe or cause problems for the police department to enforce the law to accommodate people that are here illegally. And I think this is where I always say, common sense, making common sense common again. When you're illegal and you're doing something illegal, you don't get the same protections as those of us who do things legally. All right. And that includes going to the gas station, includes going to the grocery store, and it includes sending your kids to school. To my mind, if you are illegal, you need to either suck it up and deal with your circumstances and live in the shadows, or you need to get back in your car and go back to where you come from if you're unhappy with the circumstances. Now, I understand that the liberal parts of the Houston City Council, and I feel bad for the mayor, because I feel like in a different climate he probably would have been like abstained or not done anything with this, but because everybody's watching him now, because he's just being the common sense guy and making right decisions and not making partisan decisions, they've got him under a microscope and watching everything he does so they can call him out and say, "See, you're not a Democrat." He's a Democrat from the 1960s when Democrats were normal people. Okay. They were, and I actually, what I will say is there's a lot of Democrats that are still that way. They're just scared to death to say anything, because if they do, this very small percentage that is on the hyper left, calls them out, and all the things they say they stand against, they actually push forward. So in response to this, there was five very brave councilmen that came out and wrote a letter, and they basically said they have serious concerns, that they think this creates a whole problem for law enforcement, that they shouldn't be confused. It makes our community safe. And basically, you need to uphold the law. I don't understand anybody at this juncture that wants to take a public office and does not agree with upholding the law. You put your hand on whatever mechanism you put your hand on, because I think we do not just the Bible anymore. And you said that you'll uphold the Constitution of the United States. Okay, you'll uphold the laws of this country. And by voting to not support police and not allowing them to adjudicate the laws the way that they're written, not only have you made a constitutional issue, because really what you're doing is not right, you've made my family unsafe, because I live in the city of Houston. All right. You are allowing illegals to have a run at a place. Okay. And, we had Jocelyn Nungari in this community. I know her mom is not supportive of this action, but here's the kicker. I'm going to call Julian Ramirez out. Okay. And in fact, I'm going to probably call his office and leave a formal situation statement on this. But somehow he agreed to this. Now, he was elected because he espoused more conservative viewpoints, but he allowed the Sean Tiers, who is our district attorney, to come in and explain to him how these people are afraid and how they're upset. And they're afraid because they're breaking the law. I mean, a bank robber's afraid too when he sees a policeman because he broke the law, so he's afraid they're going to catch him. So the thing is that there is not an empathy, and what I'm noticing is that you're not asking immigrants, legal immigrants, how they feel about this. You're projecting what you think on people. And that's what I think Julian's doing. Okay. I think he is basically projecting what his thought is on it when the reality is the people that the legal Hispanic community in this city have a very much different viewpoint. And in fact, one of my friends called over there to espouse it. And the second they said they were a Mexican American, they were like so excited to hear from them. And she said, no, no, no. I'm very unhappy with this situation. I'm very unhappy with what has been done here. And I'm very unhappy with your support on it. And I hope Julian Ramirez is primaried. I hope he never tries to come to another Republican club and ask for a vote or a dollar again. Okay. Because you basically sold out every person that voted for you underneath this. All right. And here's the kicker. I think the vote was like 12-5, right? So he could have just voted and it wouldn't have changed anything. So to go out and to do it this way and to try to justify a vote going against the people that voted you in is, again, it's the same thing I've been saying. When you are elected to be a representative, you need to represent the people that elected you. All right. And when people are calling you and saying, hey, you shouldn't be doing this, or hey, this flies in against the, don't expect a warm and fuzzy thing. So I hope he never shows up at one of any of the luncheons that I'm at because I'll be the first one to tell him, what are you doing here? Because you don't belong here. And I have more than he does, which is I am naturalized. I have the authority to speak on the subject because I've been living this way since I got here. Okay. So I'm very disappointed, and disappointed is not right. They're not the right word because you know what? Politicians don't disappoint me. They aggravate me when they don't do the right thing. So hats off to Amy Peck, Fred Flickinger, Mary Nan Huffman, Twyla Carter, and Willie Davis for doing the right thing and voting for the Constitution of the United States, understanding that the city of Houston has no business making immigration policy, especially when it flies in the face of the law of the land. And by the way, I'm proud because two of them are from Kingwood, where I live. So I'm especially proud for that. So one of them is our actual councilman, and then Miss Carter's an at-large position, but she also lives here in Kingwood. Um, so what I will say is that I just don't think that I think that we look at this from this bleeding heart standpoint, and we truly don't understand. And I think you need to talk to the uh, natural immigration, the legal immigrants in this country who live this circumstance every day and don't have a problem with it. I don't have a problem voting. I don't have a problem getting a driver's license. I don't have a problem coming in and out of the country. I don't have a problem going to the grocery store. I don't have any of those problems because I am a legal citizen. I am a legal resident, and I went through a process the proper way. We're going to talk about the process too, because this is going to dovetail into something else as I say that. Um, it is not the people of Houston's fault that millions of illegals were allowed into the country. It is not our responsibility. And the way the law is presently written on a federal level dictates that the president and ICE are acting within the confines of the law. I have no problem showing my papers to anybody that wants to ask about them. Okay. The other thing I'm going to mention on a side note is Cindy Siegel. She is the party chair here in Harris County. She's filed a lawsuit and a complaint with Ken Paxton, who is our attorney general. the legislature had passed some laws prohibiting this type of behavior. So the city of Houston now is in violation of the laws. And there's very few areas in the country that have done something similar to what the city of Houston did. They were up there railing about Dallas and Austin and all this other stuff. Um, you know, at the end of the day, I don't think they have ordinances along the end of the line of this, because once it was passed, it was just New York, Chicago, and Los Angeles. Um, we're not New York, we're not Chicago, we're not Los Angeles, and we're also not Dallas. Um, so we're our own entity, and we should do and function the way our citizens want. And I am here to tell you that the biggest concern in this election is safety, that all Houstonians don't feel safe because of the crime and letting the criminals out. And that's not just related to immigration, it's also about letting the criminals out of jail as well. So we have that going on also. The next topic I want to do is it's kind of dovetails to this, okay? Because there is another side of this problem. And the other side of this problem is around the fact that there's no path to citizenship in the present laws. So if you come here illegally, there's no path to citizenship. And I think most people, like if I just went out and did a man on the street interview, I think most people think that the people that are here illegally, they just don't want to be legal. So they don't make the attempt to be legal. But the reality is that once you're in the country illegally, there is no path moving forward for you to become legal. So that's where this becomes a bit of an issue. Um, and I think most people don't recognize that. And I think it's something that has to be dealt with. So all the way along, and if you look back at previous episodes, you'll notice that I've been trying to get the word out that there is no path to citizenship. Um, Not that I want a path to citizenship per se. Okay, so don't misunderstand the interpretation on that. Um, but there is no path to citizenship. And because there's no path to citizenship, what that means is that everybody here illegally needs to get in their cars and go home, or on an airplane and go home. The other people caught up in this are visa overstayers. As much as we talk about the illegals that came across the border and we watched it all on TV, there's a lot of people that have visa problems because the immigration office is not functioning properly because it's so overwhelmed. So they can't get their visa renewed. Once their visa expires, they become visa overstayers, which makes them illegal. They have no path either. So with all of that said, I have been advocating a path to kind of solve this problem, because my contention has been, and it will continue to be, that the Democrats nor the Republicans want a solution to this problem. What they want is the issue, because it allows them to say, see, you're for deporting everybody, so you have to vote for this guy, or you're against ICE, so you have to go vote for this guy. Um, Instead of standing on how to solve issues, they are using it as a wedge issue. And it's the same thing. I was talking to my friend Bill the other day, and I was telling him that the same thing happened with abortion. I am pro-life, so I will disclose that. But what I will say on that is that since 1972, when Roe v. Wade went into force, the Democrats had all three branches of government under Bill Clinton for a while, under Barack Obama for a while, and they had two opportunities to make a law or write it into Obamacare. They could have written it into Obamacare. And once it became codified as a law, the Supreme Court would have had no bearing on it, because again, the Supreme Court, you have to understand what the Supreme Court's job is, which is their job is to say, hey, is it constitutional or not? Or is this, the way the framers intended it? And we have to talk about the Supreme Court here in a minute too. But they had the opportunity to codify it multiple times since 1972, and they opted not to, because they liked the issue more than they liked the solution. Now, some of the state legislatures, and again, whatever you think about abortion, this is not that type of a discussion at the moment. It has always been a states' rights issue that it's not a federal. So each state can mandate and decide what they want to do. So, as much as I don't like the laws that were put forth in New York or Virginia, I don't live in New York or Virginia. And I'm not in charge of electing people to change those laws. In Texas, the law is the way it is. When I vote, I consider, is that person going to support what I want them to support? And if so, because the framers knew that most policies or most things that affected your life were local. So if you understand that most things are local, then it should be done that way. So I don't have a problem with it being a states' rights situation and each state having a different abortion law and all of that. Okay. So because that's the way it was intended. But my point in bringing this up is that there was at least two opportunities off the top of my head that they actually had the opportunity to change the law. And because they had the opportunity to change the law, and they didn't, it promulgates the theory that I have, which is they want the issue, they don't want the solution. We also had the same thing happen with DACA, and I'll tell you about DACA here. Okay. So President Obama put DACA in for these minor children, that came here, and he kind of gave them a protected class and did it by executive order. So when Donald Trump came into office, he revoked DACA. But what he did when he revoked DACA is he did what everybody should do, is he said to the Congress, go write the law. I'm not saying I'm for or against DACA, but go write the law. And when you write the law and codify legally the DACA parameters, I will sign it. I won't veto it. That has never happened. Now, I think they want to call them the Dreamers, okay, is what this Dreamer Act is, but nobody's worked to pass it because I think, again, they want the issue. They don't want the solution, okay? So that brings me up to today. Back in July, I said today, but back in July, but why this caught my attention is it's come back up. So while Iran is taking up and sucking up all the air on the TV, nobody was paying attention to this. And Megyn Kelly brought this up the other night, and I am going to tell you, um, I listen to Megyn Kelly because she kind of comes up the middle at things. I think she's abhorrently wrong on this, as I think all the right-wing pundits are wrong on this. And I don't know if this is what they believe or what they're saying so they keep ratings. But I'm not one that cares about ratings at this point. I don't make money off of this. I'm just out there trying to get people educated so people make the right choices in the voting booth and have the right information. Because I think that's the problem. We don't have a good way to have good, solid information at this point. So there is this thing in the Congress that was put forth by Maria Salazar, who is a congresswoman out of Florida, and she is a Republican. And it is called the Dignity Act. Okay. And the Dignity Act, like I said, the right wing pundits are against it. All right. And I mean, I guess it was Bannon that came out and said they should turn in their Republican card and this lady needs to be primaried. And then Megyn Kelly went on a 20-minute rant the other night too of just deport everybody, just deport everybody. Okay. Now, I just got done on a whole talk about ICE and the city of Houston and enforcing the laws. There is no solution to the problem on the table at the moment because it is not viable for us to go door to door and hunt down 20 to 30 million people. The other thing is, I think if you reasonably asked most people, they don't want the criminal element here, but they also don't want their lawn service or their housekeeper or the construction worker or their handyman deported because They're doing a job. They're here. They're paying taxes. They are not causing a problem per se within the system, but they are illegal. And are they the same illegal as the Trendy Aragua people that took over an apartment complex in Denver? And again, I think this becomes a common sense issue. Okay. So it's great to be right wing and want to scream about, oh, we must deport everybody. I'm going to tell you right now, it's not possible. And the way the system is at the moment, there is no mechanism to solve the problem. So you have to solve the problem. So I have been saying all the way along that I thought the solution to the problem was to come up with a situation that gave these folks a permanent residency status, which means you're here, but you can't vote. Okay. And let them utilize that, because I don't want their votes. They are not here legally. They did not come here legally. And I don't think they should have the right to vote in this country. I don't think they should be counted in censuses either, because they're affecting. And this is where the Congress, as much as they say they don't like it on the right and they're all for it on the left, they want more seats. They know that we can get some of these people to get under the wire and cast votes when they shouldn't, because we have the motor voter laws and people were registered to vote that probably really shouldn't be. We've got states that are giving driver's license to these folks. Okay. So there's a whole lot of chaos because of the circumstance. Should the Democrats have allowed this to happen? No. Most of it was under Biden. Yes, there was some under Obama. But Obama actually deported a bunch of people as well. Okay. And as much as we saw them coming in boxcars and he didn't stop them at the border, he also was at least trying to deport some of them. Okay. But these are all narratives instead of what is the right thing to say. So Megyn Kelly's kind of mocking that it's called dignity and it's a sham and it's a this and it's a that. Actually, it's a common sense solution to a problem. Okay. And let me tell you why it's this Dignity Act is a common sense solution. First of all, it started with the year 2021. So all of Biden's chaos is not included in this proposal. This takes care of all the people that have been here prior to 2021. Okay. So it doesn't solve the chaos problem that Biden caused, but it does take a look at these people that have been here for at least 7 years, starting in 2021 backwards. Okay. And evaluate them. And those are these people that I'm saying they're the dreamers or the DACA kids. Some of those DACA kids are now, 40 years old, people. Okay, so let me throw something else out at you. Okay. Starter number one is the last amnesty program was under Ronald Reagan when he was president. I think I was a freshman in high school or college. All right. So this happened at a time when I was still in college. I'm now almost 60 years old. All right. Now, I didn't go to college when I was an older person. I went to college when I was in my teens and 20s. So, to kind of talk about that, there hasn't been this mass amnesty program since that happened with Reagan. Okay. Some of these kids have been here and they're 40 and 50 years old. So I think again, I think sometimes you think through the world and you view the world sometimes through your own prism, right? So what would happen if I went back and somebody said to me, you can no longer be in the United States and you must go back to Italy? Okay. I don't speak Italian. I do understand some of it, but I don't speak it. I don't know Italian culture. I do know spaghetti and meatballs, but from what I understand, Marco Polo invented that, and it's not truly Italian. I have no idea of how to go live in Italy. Now, Italy's tame. People go on their vacation. But imagine the kid that is now 40 that got here when he was 2 and he's going to be sent back to Ecuador. We were more upset about the criminal guy that got sent to Ecuador, that we were all worried about him. Why would we want to send 40-year-old people that have been here their whole life back to Ecuador or El Salvador or, Honduras? I mean, you can't, theoretically, I guess you can do it, but I'm of the opinion that you cannot take people that have grown up in an American culture and send them to Guatemala. They're not going to know what to do. Okay. Um, so that's the first thing. So I think we've got to approach this. So if you want to solve a problem, great. But if you want to keep it a wedge issue, then just keep doing what you're doing, because you've got one side, you're all upset about the dead people that got shot in Minneapolis because of ICE, and ICE is out of control. Fix the law, and then there is no problem. Okay. So Salazar comes out with this Dignity Act, back to what I was saying. Okay. What she wants to do is give everybody that's been here since 2021, that has not committed a crime, not been a problem, that's living their life, a 7-year period. That's like, basically they can be here 7 years. They've got a legalized status to them. But there's no direct path to citizenship. And I'm going to use the word direct because there's one tweak in this whole thing that I would make. Okay. So first of all, there's 7 years. So for the next 7 years, those people are protected and can live their life. They have no path to citizenship, but they can live their life. There is a renewal period for another 5 years. So now that's 12 years. We've kicked the can down the road with these people for 12 years. What I will tell you is I have a lot of Hispanic folks that I'm around, and they all say that a lot of them just want a work visa program. They want to work and they want to be able to go home. They don't want to be here permanently. They don't want to be Americans. They don't want to live here. They just need a hospitable place to work, which is the Chamber of Commerce argument. Okay, so that's why the Republicans don't want this, because they want the workforce. Okay, the Democrats want the voter base and the Republicans want the workforce. So they both want these people, just for different reasons. Okay. So creating a workforce, a work visa, something like that is probably a long-term solution to this also. But for right now, let's start with 7 years. All right. You're okay. 5 more years you can renew. You're okay. Now, at the end of the 5 year, the 12-year period, you do have the ability to become a permanent residency status. Okay. And once you do, that permanent residency status does have a path to citizenship in it. Okay. I think the thought is, by the time 12 years goes by, a lot of these people are going to end up going back, because they can come and go. They can probably go back to their own country and come in and out as they want in that way. Um, I think it should be cut off at green card status, and they just have to stay every, whatever the green card renewal period is now, you just have to renew it every so often. And maybe it's a special class of green card that's created to do this. I am not in favor of one person that came here illegally, whether they did it forcibly or not, to be given any type of ability to vote. Period. End of story. That also rewards the Democrats' bad behavior of allowing these people in the country, because they're trying to import a voter base. Now, I'm going to say something on that as well. Um, a majority of the Hispanic world have a Catholic value system. Whether they're Catholic or not, they have a Catholic value system. Family, morals, obligation, work ethic. They're not your typical Democrat voter. And they're not going to come here and say, oh, you let me in the country. Oh, goody, I'm going to vote for a Democrat. Because if you take the Cuban population as an example, they vote mostly Republican. And you're starting to see that same tide happen now in South Texas, that the illegals came in, they had the kids can vote, the kids are voting age, and they're voting red, because there is a common sense, family values, religious aspect to this that the Democrats, I think they don't recognize it because it's not in their purview. You know how I just said that you look at the world through your own glasses? Okay. I think it's not in their purview. So as a result, they don't recognize that this is really the way. So although I would be willing to hedge a bet on that and guess that these people would vote mostly Republican in the long run, I don't think they should vote for anybody because I think they came here illegally, whether it's their choice or not, but they shouldn't come here. Okay. Now, I know that a lot of you are going to be unhappy because I am saying that illegal immigrants should be allowed to stay here with some type of permanent situation. You have to fix the crazy that's going on. Okay. You have to address what is going on. I don't agree with the two people that wanted to make TikTok videos and got shot. And, I'm sorry they're dead. But on the other side, it's not a situation I would have put myself in. I understand to respect law enforcement, but that circumstance should have never gotten whipped up to that in the first place, that somebody decided they were going to get in their car and try to run over an ICE agent. We are so propagandized at this point that unless there's sane people out there addressing this, everybody looks at everything through a partisan filter, which is why I put this podcast together in the first place, because a lot of these issues should not be a left or a right. They should be a right or a wrong. What is common sense? Common sense is you obey the law. If you're not going to obey the law, then let's abolish the law and say there's no laws. Let's just have at it and have anarchy. Okay. And I don't want to hear about how I shouldn't have a gun because that's a law you like. I need the gun because you're now saying that we should let the illegals run around and do illegal things and we shouldn't care. Okay. So you can't have it all ways, but you have to. I feel the role of government is to solve big problems. It's not to create them. And granted, I think, again, I want to say, under Biden, this all kind of exploded off its hinges because whoever was running the White House at the time, that's what they wanted because they wanted this anarchy. They wanted this voting issue and they misjudged what they're doing. Okay. I really think they gravely they do not understand the Hispanic population at large, that they're very family oriented, that they have large families, and that they're, like I said, I use the word Catholic because a majority of them are, or at least have come up in households that have that kind of a background. Um, they're not as, I'm gonna use the right word, progressive. They're more conservative in their thought process and how they view the world. Um, I think they think they're going to recreate what they did with the Black population of America. I think that if I look back in the 60s, those folks, were also very much, um, God country, and I think many still are. I think the problem is that by separating the families the way the Civil Rights Act did in the 60s, I think that it actually, some of the welfare laws, I think it hurt the Black community. And someday we'll talk about education and how the education system, as much as money as we're putting into it and as much as the teacher unions are, the that the education system in the lower income communities is just horrific. Um, and we keep moving the bar downward instead of trying to bring them along and move them upward. And I think that, to me, that's one of the worst things that happens in this country is the failure of the education system. But I think it's a bureaucratic failure. Um, at least that's my opinion on it. I think the teachers, for the most part, go to work and try to do the best job that they can. I think it's the bureaucracy that's failing the people, not failing the students, not so much but the system itself is setting them up to fail, and it's not setting them up to make winners in this life. And that's a really big problem. So I support starting with this Dignity Act. The change I would like to see is that they never get past a green card status. Okay, that it's basically a work visa or a permit. If it's a permanent residency status, it never becomes an actual citizen, so that they have the right to vote. Because I think that's the deal breaker for me. I think something has to be done. I think the DACA kids need something done. I think all these groups need something done. The problem is that I do not want them to have the right to vote. To the president's credit, he's enforcing the law. When Congress changes the law, I am going to assume he will change his behavior. Okay. Um, I will say it still requires something to be done with these people that don't qualify for this program. So there is going to have to be a second round of this somewhere. Or they can stay 7 years. If they're here 7 years and they've kept their nose clean, and can pass a background check, maybe that becomes a moving target as we move forward. And in the meantime, you just keep deporting whatever you come to. And to the people that are afraid to go to a grocery store or a gas station or a hospital, if those are important things to you, get in your car and go home. You can't just come and disrupt an entire country because, you don't like where you live and we don't recognize borders, and then cry because we're not being hospitable to you. Um, yeah, it's what happens when you're illegal. Ask anybody that's been on the run from the law. It's the same problem. I mean, even some of you may have even when you have to hide your car from the repo man, it's all the same thing. All right. It really is the same type situation. When you do something outside the confines of what you're supposed to do, it requires you to do other things. And if you don't like it, fix your circumstances or deal with it. Suck it up and deal with it. You got two choices here. Next on my list of immigration issues, birthright citizenship. Okay. And I I have to I really I have to really say I'm kind of disappointed in the arguments that were put forth on this. Um, and the lack of understanding about how it's being utilized. So, first of all, we keep talking about this Chinese family in the 1800s, except the Chinese family's parents were here as legal. So, that's one circumstance. We're talking about people that are literally, they have a tourism business that these people are getting on airplanes, flying here, having their babies, and then those babies are American citizens. And this is where Americans are not good at something, okay? At least not all Americans are good at something. We're a frog in boiling water. The Chinese know this, okay? I get an American citizen. I have a baby. It becomes an American citizen. It comes back to China. It lives in China. It has the culture of China. And it has a baby, and that baby's American citizen because it's born to American citizens. So no longer do you have to be born on the soil. They are playing a long game that they literally can have enough voters to come and influence our elections. So I do not believe that the 14th Amendment was designed for China to breed American citizens, because in essence, that's what they're doing. Okay. It's not just anchor babies. The other thing is they're talking about the jurisdiction. It says, and the jurisdiction thereof. Okay. And it's just like we have reading deficiencies when it comes to the separation of church and state. It says Congress cannot establish a national religion. It doesn't say that we have to separate church and state. That was in the trash can. Okay. That Thomas Jefferson threw that away. And they said Congress cannot establish a state sponsored religion. Okay. That's the difference. So we have a whole lot of that going on too, but it says and they have to be in the jurisdiction thereof. This was truly designed to help the Black families be able to get a citizenship, and it was very specific. Now, I've heard some people say that if you don't like it, then amend the Constitution. And this goes back to the 17th Amendment now, if I really want to say. So the process to amend the Constitution has become way too political to amend the Constitution, because the Senate has been taking out of the hands of the state house. And I went to the Harris County SD4 convention a few weeks ago, and on there it was to repeal the 17th Amendment. And some lady got up and started screaming that she really needed to directly elect her senators and that she didn't want to lose the right to do that. Obviously, not a constitutional scholar, as I say that. Not that I am, but I understand. So the House of Representatives was directly elected by the people, and it was designed to be a representative branch of government. It was given purse strings because it's my money you're taking to go give out. So the jobs given to the Congress make sense. The jobs given to the Senate are government structure jobs, and they were supposed to be performed by the state house. So you're not directly electing those people. What you're doing is you're electing people at the state house level, and then they would pick the senators. If you don't like who the senators are picking or the senators they're picking, then you replace your state house. And right now, I think the Team Red, I believe, has 32 state houses right now, which would give them 64 senators if we did this right. We wouldn't have this filibuster nonsense that's going on, which I'm going to talk about that in a second too. We wouldn't have that going on because a majority of the state houses in this country are red. Okay, they're not blue. And the state houses represent the entire state. There's not a percentage. There's not a, those are directly elect. Those again are directly elected. So the framers of the Constitution understand that a majority of all politics was local. So their original system set up a system that you had direct representation in the House of Representatives, you had indirect representation through your state houses, and the stuff assigned, the jobs assigned to the Senate, like picking judges, those should not be partisan decisions. And as a result, you can see we have a humongous partisan judiciary at this point because of how this was all put together. So there's a lot of problems in how this is all being worked out. I get the feeling that this decision is going to end up being 7-2, and I'm pretty disappointed in at least Gorsuch, because the longer he's there, the less conservative he seems to be. I never was sold that Kavanaugh was pretty conservative. And, Coney Barrett has not shown to be conservative either. But I think what you're going to do is, in the strictest constitutional way, you're going to end up with Alito and Thomas on one side and all the other ones on the other. And, some of them don't even understand the law. So, I mean, there's that. I mean, I could make the joke of who knows what a woman is. There is that out there too. If you don't know what the woman is, I don't know how you can rule on a law, but is what it is. But I think that the long range goal, by allowing this to stand and not reverse the ruling, we're looking at allowing people to come in, have babies, and breed themselves an army of voters that could basically say, we want to turn the United States over to China and put their own leader in. You only, because you have the naturalized citizens are not able to, but American citizens are. There's no requirement of residence, okay, per se. So you can grow up in China and still be the president of the United States. I mean, it's a bloodless way to take over a country. It's really pretty smart, actually. And the question I would have and challenge everybody is that what the framers intended? Did they intend to allow people to come here? I don't think they did. I don't think they saw the tourism. I don't think they saw airplanes, how easy it is to get from point A to point B. And this is really not even the framers, because this was done, in the 1860s, 1870s, after the Civil War. So this is not even something the original framers would have done. I do not think this is what the framers intended. And the case law that they're citing was two Americans that were, or two legal residents that were here from China, not anybody passing through the border. Oh, up, you're a citizen. Yay, you won the lottery. While there's people lined up across the entire globe in a lottery system to get a visa to the country. So it's just, just kind of keep coming here, squatting, having a kid, and going back to wherever you came from. You literally are breeding the overthrow of the country. Now, if that doesn't concern you and you think that's no problem, more power to you. I am concerned because those American citizens, every baby they have, they are also American citizens. And it becomes like, I hate to say cockroaches, something, rabbits are cute. We just came out of Easter. Let's go with rabbits. All right. It becomes breeding like rabbits. And you end up with creating this entire situation of American citizens that are entitled to American benefits, by the way. I will say that as well. Um, Not all countries have birthright citizenship. I think there's 30 out of the entire globe that have it, but you don't see people clamoring to get into Nairobi. So I think we need to look at this. I mentioned the filibuster. That brings up the SAVE Act. I think that instead of I'm a person that says nuke the filibuster. And I understand that we don't want to do it because it minority, blah 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 blah. Okay, I get all of that, but then force the Democrats. Somebody was telling me this, and I don't know if it's true. I guess I should have looked at this before, but they said that when you get up to speak, you can only do it 2 times on a topic. So their opinion is let it cycle through, let them all cycle through, and then it has to go on, and debate has to stop, and then you can take a regular majority vote. This is very procedural in nature. It's Robert Rules of Order for those of you that, it's just the parliamentarian way to do things. Um, we have a broken government when 80% of the people want something and we can't get it passed. And again, I don't think they want the Save America because, the Democrats want legal votes. They don't want the election system secured. I think that going back, I can 100% for sure, history supports this, is that Richard Nixon won the 1962 election. And the mayor of Chicago forced in votes illegally. And Nixon did what was best for the country and allowed Kennedy to win. That's a historical fact at this point. Now, I don't know how many of you know that, but it is a historical fact that Nixon actually won the 1962 election. It sucks for Kennedy because had he not been president, he still might be walking around on the earth. There is that. When you steal an election, bad things happen to you, I guess. But um, on the other side of the coin, there has been voter fraud, mail-in ballots. They're not allowed anywhere else in the world. And the reason why is because they know they can flood the zone with them. Okay, they don't know where they came from, they don't know who they belong to, and they just open them and start counting them. The other thing is that when you get to election day and you find out how many votes you need, and then you're allowed to keep mailing in ballots that are postmarked after election day, that allows you just to gin the system up and do it. And anybody that thinks these things are not happening, and I'll even say maybe on both sides. I won't just say on one side. Okay, maybe it's happening on both sides. But anybody that thinks that that's not happening, you are naive as far as I'm concerned. And you need to consider possibly that there's some issues there. The filibuster needs to go back to what it was, is you need to stand there and you can read the dictionary until you fall over and then the next person can come. Okay. And then you can fall over and the next person can come. But this modified filibuster that you can go home, have a bologna sandwich, take a nap, go to bed, come back the next day, start over. That needs to stop as far as I'm concerned. So I also want to address this idea that women are too stupid to be able to figure out how to vote. It's the same argument they have with black people that they're too stupid to vote too, because they can't figure out how to get an ID. We can't figure out how to get a voter registration or how to get married and have our name changed because, that's not anything anybody needs to know how to do because we're too stupid to be able to do it. And I think it's insulting for anybody to come and say, well, because your name on your birth certificate doesn't match, that you can't show documentation that you are who you are. You can get a passport. Your passport is all you should need. And I'm to the point in my life that I think every American should have a passport at this juncture. I mean, it basically becomes a national ID card in a roundabout sort of way. And on some level, our driver's license, those of the states that have the stars on them so that we can fly, they really are. They before they gave me a driver's license and renewed my driver's license, they reviewed my citizenship and made sure that I was here legally. Um, but I don't, if I have to show a passport or some documentation that shows that I'm eligible, that I'm an American citizen and I'm eligible to vote, um, as long as I can get a passport, I don't see, and like I said, this idea and this notion that requiring ID is that we're all too stupid to figure out how to get one. I have to have one for the bank. Any black person that has a bank account has to get an ID card because you can't have a bank account without an ID card. Welfare, you have to have an ID card for welfare, food stamps, school to enroll your kids in school. So this notion that people live in the shadows, that they don't have to have ID cards, and I'm not talking driver's license. Some of them don't have driver's license. I'm talking state issued ID cards, is bananas to me. It is not a real thing. Um, and we need to understand that and stop trying to say minorities and women are too stupid to figure out how to vote. Frankly, if they're too stupid to figure out how to vote, then they probably don't need to vote because they're too stupid to vote, not figure out how to. They don't know how to vote. Who even they don't know how to discern issues. So, I mean, there's probably that too, if I really wanted to be honest about it. Um, I think the only other thing that I'm going to say is that Um, I'm glad that Pam Bondi and Christy Nome are gone. I had somebody ask me why I thought that had happened. I think in both cases, they did not know how to conduct themselves. I'm surprised on Nome's case. I'm not so surprised in Bondi's case because, Bondi wasn't a public figure per se. Nome was a governor, so she should have done a little bit better and understand how to handle the press, how to handle statements. I applied for a position this week, and one of the questions they asked me is, can I define equity? And I was like, I think the typical Republican would say, equity shouldn't be on anything. But what I said was, my answer was, when it comes to flood mitigation, the socioeconomic impact of the neighborhood should not have a bearing on whether that neighborhood receives flood mitigation. So all the way along, my understanding was here in Harris County, flood mitigation was done, and it was done for the better neighborhoods because those better neighborhoods brought in more tax dollars. Okay. It wasn't because it was a racist issue. It was an economic issue that as long as you kept the more expensive houses more expensive, the tax base would grow. Okay. And as a result, when the Democrats took over Commissioner's Court, they put this equity, diversity, and inclusion policy in. And the equity piece of it was interesting because what they were trying to do is make sure that poorer communities got flood dollars um, to the exclusion of more affluent communities. And my opinion is that the flood situation has nothing to do with a dollar. Okay. Um, Poor neighborhoods are not flooded any more than rich neighborhoods are flooded, and everybody's circumstances should be assessed on public safety. Flooding is a public safety issue first. And if you approach it that way, you will make good, solid decisions on who should receive flood dollars and who shouldn't. That's a really, to my mind, that's a good answer. That is not a political answer. It is a common sense answer. And I don't know that I felt, Bondi did this whole show thing with the Epstein books and all of that. Look, that should never have happened. And Christy Nome, I half wonder if part of it with her too was not only was she did not do good in her testimony to Congress. I think they probably knew somewhere that her husband was out there lurking in that story. So between that and any other marital problems, that sets up for a blackmail situation. So if anything, we don't need secretaries that can be blackmailed for results. So I'm not opposed to either one of them being let go at this point. Um, it sucks that they're both women, I suppose, but again, you want the best person for the job, and I would love to live in a world where none of those were factors, that I have to pick a woman because I have to pick a woman. I just want the best person for the job. If the best person for the job is a woman, so be it. If the best person for the job is a man, so be it. Um, Last but not least, all these people that are upset about Trump's negotiation language, okay? He's talking to the Iranians as a business, like how you would negotiate in a business. You're going to do it this way, or I'm going to take your company over. All right. So I understand that the theatrics on it seem to be lost, and oh, we need to have the dignity of the president and blah blah blah. I got news for you. These people are thugs. They wouldn't hesitate to kill you, your family, or anybody else. And they don't need to be talked to nicely or diplomatically. They need to be, the Islamic Republic needs to be taken out because they are this biggest sponsor of terrorism. Now, I don't like, and I'm probably going to get some ire for somebody. I don't like the way Netanyahu's handling some of this either. So I think there's some blame on both sides of this. But make no mistake, we've been at war with Iran for 47 years. And because of that, if you ask the people that live there, they would like the Islamic Republic gone, which is why the people are out celebrating. They're not protesting, they're celebrating. You guys get confused. You see a gathering of people and you assume that they're unhappy. Maybe they're gathering because they're happy, because they want people to know there's happiness. I have yet to talk to somebody that was an Iranian citizen that's here, living here legally, that is unhappy that we took these steps. I personally think we should wipe the whole thing out, and just stopping short of that solves nothing. I understand that Trump's upset about oil prices. Trust me, I'm not so happy about the gas prices. And somebody sent a thing from California that says you're paying $8 or $9 a gallon. First of all, get rid of whoever's charging you $8 or $9 a gallon, because that's a California problem. That's not a gas problem. Gas is, running here in Houston, it's running about 375 a gallon right now. I'm not happy with 375 a gallon gas. Let's make no mistake. And I don't necessarily have a vehicles that's the most, because I went and bought an off-road vehicle, so it doesn't do as good on gas mileage. If I changed the tires, I guess it probably would. But I like having an off-road vehicle, so now I have to suck it up with a $60 tank of gas. Um, but at the end of the day, I think the world is a safer place if the Islamic Republic is not in charge of Iran. So the decision is probably the right decision. I don't know that the execution is right, and I don't know that the people that sold the president on doing this realized that this was going to get past a couple days, let alone a couple weeks. And now we're going to head to a couple months. So I do think that's a problem. I just saw a headline that says the Iranian, and this is again AI. I don't know what's true and what's not. The Iranians said they're going to blow up the Navy of the United States. Okay, go ahead and do that. Do you like a glass factory sitting in the middle of Tehran? I mean, I think this is that problem, that how much restraint do we want, do we expect us to have? The Iranians are like annoying little kids that, well, we're going to blow up your Navy. Okay, you blow up my Navy. We'll see how that ends for you. We're not playing battleship in the Strait of Hormuz. Let the ships through. I also don't like the precedents that this set, because before the Strait of Hormuz was kind of running, now the Iranians can say, well, I don't like what you're doing, so we're just going to shut this strait down. So I think there needs to be some kind of international regulation over that. Um, there needs to be something that does to set that correctly. But that's a little bit out of my, as you can see, I know a whole lot more about immigration and the Constitution than I do about Iran. But I do think that the Islamic Republic is not a friendly government to humanity. Um, and oh, by the way, I do think it's funny that we now have the Democrats protesting a ceasefire. I don't know when the Democrats decided that they were going to be anti this country, but we need to start getting back where we all kind of row in the same direction or something. Because the way it's going right now, this divisiveness that's here, you're going to get past to a point where it cannot be reconciled. And it's becoming more and more that way. I mean, and to me, if I talk about this in a common sense method, I mean, some of this is just common sense. You don't want people running around and bombing innocent people. You don't want people cutting off little children's body parts. I mean, there's just some common sense tenets out there that we seem to just live on the extreme fringes of everything in both directions. And all of us in the middle are like, you guys are whack, but don't know how to fix it. And then you have the government posturing to the cameras. So it's a bad situation. And we need to start coming up with, when we agree with something 80% of the time, let's figure out how to get that done. Let's stop the ICE raids by making legislation that starts to fix the problem. Those are my opinions on it. I'm sure some of you will disagree. You're more than willing to welcome to contact me and send me hate mail if you want. That's fine, or make little hate comments in the scroll at Facebook. I'm fine with that because the people making the hateful comments are, they're not looking at how do you solve a problem. First and foremost, I want to solve a problem. Um, and the way you do that is to understand the problem and not just believe the rhetoric that goes on around it in both directions. I am disappointed in Laura Ingraham, Steve Bannon, Megyn Kelly, any of them that wanted to come out. Even Charlie Kirk came out against any type of behavior like this, and he came out against that dignity law as well. How do you solve it? Because you cannot deport. You physically, it cannot deport the amount of people that need to be deported out of the country. And now what you have is this opposite swing of the pendulum that the law is not being enforced, which makes all of us less safe. So we have to pick a starting spot and start down a road. And this thing seems to have bipartisan support. And the only thing I would like to see is that any type of legalization stops at a legal permanent resident status and never goes. Those people can never become citizens. But the legal residency piece solves all of it. So, all right. I think that's all I have to say for Saturday. You guys have a good week, and I'll be back soon. I'm going to try to get back in the habit of doing these weekly again. It's just, like I said, work has been so busy. I just have not been had the time to sit down and put something like this together. So, anyway, have a good week, and I'll talk at you soon.